Okay, so it has started. Yeah, right. So here, so what we have seen till now is that, so first thing is that we saw the requisition business function. So which means that if I want to basically create the requisition, so then what are the controls and what are the related setups that I will need if I want to create this particular requisition. Okay, so that is one thing that we have seen. And similarly, if I want to create this purchase, because in procurement, if we talk about the transaction, so it is primarily two type of transactions that we'll talk about. So first thing is that requisition, and the second thing is about the purchase order. So this purchase order and the other related controls are basically placed under this particular setup called procurement business function. Okay, so these are the two things that we have seen. Okay, so next what we have is that, so we have something called procurement agent. So now what exactly is procurement agent is that, so let's say I have a requirement to, let's say, procure 10 quantities of table. So probably I'm taking on rent for, let's say, $10,000. So I have taken probably a small space. Okay, so for which I'm trying to purchase this particular item. So now if I'm purchasing this particular item, so then there will be some person who will be requesting this item, or this particular person will raise this particular purchase order to the vendor. Okay. So now this person is what we are calling it as either the buyer or the procurement agent. So in terms of Oracle Cloud, we call this as procurement agent, but in business term, it is the buyer who raises this purchase order with the supplier. Okay. So now this works basis on the business unit. Okay. So that's the reason if you see the scope is always the business unit. So I'll just even the purchase order that we are creating. So this is on the basis of purchase. I mean the business unit. Okay. So I'll have to attach with the business unit. Okay. So since we will have to create it from the scratch, so what I'm doing for now is that I'm using the existing one. So that is Supremo Business Unit. We will be using. Okay, so I'll just select this and I'll say save and close. So the scope will be created. I mean, the scope will be selected. Okay, so now under this, if you see, so one is this search screen. If I have created this particular agent or the buyer in the system already, so if I want to query if this particular buyer has access to the requisition or only to the purchase order. So all those information I can see by searching for the particular person. Okay. So now if I want to create a new person, so what I'll have to do is that, so I'll have to say new user, and here I have to give the unit name. Okay. So in this case it is Supremo US, and okay, so let me take this user. Okay. And I'm attaching with this unit. Okay, so this would be the default requisitioning unit for this particular buyer or the procurement agent. Okay, so anyway I can override if I have two access that is given to this particular user. So what would be the default is what we are trying to make here. So now created this as my default entity. So now if I create the second access to this particular procurement agent, so I will have to leave this particular option as blank. So that's the reason if you see, so this is optional. So this is not mandatory as you can see from here. Okay. And then if you want to set the default printer so that you can set it up. So the reason why we will set this default printer is that so let's say I have created this requisition and this requisition has been converted as purchase order, and this purchase order now I want to release it to the supplier. So in order to do that, so if I want to print this particular PO, so I will have to give the printer information. Okay. So if I want to have this as an default option, so I'll have to go to the networks and add the printer. Okay. So after adding there, so I'll have option here. So if I have added probably two printers, I'll have in the list of values as 2, line number 1 and line number 2. So I can select either 1 or 2. Okay, so here we don't have any active printer that is connected to the system. So that's the reason we are seeing no value here. So even if I try to search, so I'll not get the value. Okay, and then we have certain options in terms of accessing the transaction. So here if you see, so we have the requisition, so we have the purchase order, we have agreement, negotiation, all those options. Okay, so now not to control, so I'll just give access to all the units. Sorry, I'm just trying to give full access, not all units. So the access that I'm giving is only for the Supremo US business unit. Okay, so once the access is given, so I can just say save and close. Okay, so this is one thing, and on the other day, so we actually added this buyer role, and we have given access to our business unit which we created earlier. Okay, so we have given access, and the second thing is that creating this particular procurement agent. Okay, I think it is saved, but then there are some issue in this thing. Okay, so another setup that we will have to do is that, so this is not part of procurement, so this is basically the payroll activity. So as part of their implementation, so they will be doing it. But to have knowledge, so because if at all we are not implementing payroll, so then it's our activity that we'll have to create this particular task. Okay. So we have, so I'll just go to the global taskbar and I'll search for manage user. Okay, so now what exactly is this manage user is that? So when we talk about the user or the employee, so we have two things. So one is that the login credentials that we share with the employee, so which we created in the security console. Okay, so the other thing is that, so if I'm working for this particular company A, so I will be working for probably the department A, that is, it could be IT. Okay, so I'll be working for IT and I might be associated with branch A. Okay, so let's say Anna Nagar. So I'm associated with the Anna Nagar and I'm working with IT department. Okay, so now this information where I can see is that, so I can see here. So here basically what I will have is that, so I'll have something called the business unit access and the legal employer. So if you remember, so when we created this legal entity, so we enabled two checkboxes. So one is payroll unit and the other one is legal employer. So now by enabling this option, that is legal employer, so we will be getting option. So whatever the legal entity that I have created, okay, so that will stand as my legal employer. I think distance is a bit slow, so okay, maybe I'll explain so what we have inside this, and then probably I'll open and show you so what are the information that we are giving. Okay, so basically, so if you see, so this is the screen where I can basically link my user details. Okay, so now if you see here, So I can say whether link user account or I can enter the username, which means that if I'm not creating this particular login credentials for employee in the security console, so I will not link, I mean, I will not say link user account, so I'll just say username. Okay. So now, on the basis of the information that I'm giving here, so what system will do is that it will create the user credentials. Okay. So here, if you see, so if you remember, so when we created username there in the security console, the email address is not mandatory, but here it is mandatory. The reason being, so now, so here I'm giving the username, but I'll not know what is the password. Okay. So how do I get the password? So it is through this email communication that I will get. Okay. So if I forgot my username or if I forgot my password, so I can use this email ID to retrieve my username or the password. Okay. So that's the idea behind it. So now I can give my last name and the first name, and then the email address and the hire date is important. So now, when this hire date will play role is that when I have, so recently we have seen some issue in one of the project. So the issue is something this. So now I have my manager. Okay, so this manager has joined recently. So let's say he joined in the month of April 2022. Okay, so now I have subordinate who is working from, let's say, 2016 or sometime before that. Okay, so now if I create this hire date as 2016 for subordinate, and I create this supervisor or the manager with 2022, so system will not allow us to save this transaction, or our approval workflow will not work in a way that we wanted to work. Okay. So for that, what we will have to do is that, so we will have to set this common date. So either it is manager or this is an employee who will be creating this purchase order. So for both of them, so we'll have to give the same date as hire date. Okay, so to avoid it. So now when I will give the exact date is that, so if I have my payroll module also implemented, so then I can go for manager dates separately and the subordinate dates separately. Okay. So now here I'm not doing that implementation of payroll. So what I will do is that I will give the standard date, that is 1st Jan 2022. Okay, so that's what I'll give. And then here, if you see, okay, so let me just say this is.
Like, why are you creating user now?
So there are two things, right? So this is not exactly the user. So this is the employee record that we are creating. So now earlier what we created is the user login credentials. But here what we are trying to create is that employment. So here if you see the person type would be the employee. So now to this employee we are associating the business unit and the other information. Got it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to
So
this employee, we are not assigning any roles. Like whatever we are creating, the business roles.
yeah, so the roles, one thing is that you can do an this thing. So you can do a request, or you after creating this particular login credentials, so you can go to the security console and you can add the roles. So here it is just the user that will be created automatically, but the roles part, so we'll have to query the user and we'll have to attach it manually.
Okay. So once we create the user or employee here, like where we want to utilize this employee?
So now, unless I create this particular person as employee, so I'll not be able to basically create my procurement agent setup. So there, if you see, so I attach someone called stock, but stock
Correct.
is the employee in this entity. So that's the
Oh,
reason
I
I was
see.
able to use it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll just show what are the informations that we have. Okay, if I select this employee, so let me just give this as 2022 and username.
So if the user already if you have created from the security console and that if you want to link it as an employee, that is doable using link user account,
Yeah, correct. So you can use this option called link user account and you can attach here.
which are created in security console.
Correct.
And that user will have the application role also, business roles also, and he will act as a, also act as a agent also.
Yeah, correct. So the role parts are completely handled in security console.
Correct.
So there, whatever the role that I'm giving, so that is the one that particular user will have. So now here, what we are trying to do is that so only that we are trying to create it as an buyer because when I create this purchase order, so I have separate column called buyer. So now if I don't create this person as buyer, so I'll not have option to create the purchase order. So if I say even if I see the option of create purchase order because I have given the role, but then I'll not have any business unit access to it, even though I have given the data access it because it is mandatory that I will need this particular setup to be completed, that is the procurement agent. But now if I want to create this procurement agent, I will need this manage user option to be completed.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll just change it to employee. Okay, so based on this, so we'll have the other fields.
What all other options are there?
So others are like you have expat and then you have the contract employees and then you have the labors and the other options also. So I'll just show
Any
one
other
second.
person type is eligible for creating agent, or it has to be only employee?
Only employee.
Okay,
Yeah.
only employee. Okay, okay. And so slow. Okay. Procurement agent has to be employee.
Yeah.
Very
Okay.
slow.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I have selected this as employee. So these are the options that we will have. So primarily the employee and then the optionally expat and then you'll have the contract and then even the student worker, other options are there. Okay, so apart from that, if I want to add the person type, so I mean that will not have any validation like employee, but as an option if I want to capture, so I can just capture. Okay, but that will not be a meaningful thing because that will not have any validation in the system. So it's just an categorization that will be doing it. But this employee, so this will have certain validation because if you see, so since I have selected the type as employee, so I'm seeing the business unit attachment and the legal employer as well. Okay. So as I said, so this legal employer is nothing but that the option that we are giving at while we are creating this one called the legal entity. So where we said it's payroll entity and the legal employer. Okay, so that is how we are getting this value here in the list of value. Okay, and then I have this business unit access to be given. Okay, so I'll give Supremo US business unit and these are all options if I'm implementing payroll module, but since I don't have the payroll module I can leave as it is. Okay, so now if I want to, so now talking about the approval, so approval meaning it is for the requisition and also it is for the purchase order. Okay. So now if I want to basically complete my approval process based on the supervisory level. So that is, let's say I am a buyer and on top of that I have the procurement preparer and on top of that I have the procurement manager. Okay. So now there are two managers who has to approve. Okay. So what I will have to do is that in that case, So either, so I have two options. So it's again the component of BPM. Okay, so we'll see that separately, but to give an idea, so the way that I will do is that, so there are two options. So one is that I can define approval group wherein I can say this is manager one and this is manager two. And option number two that I have is that, so here I can attach the manager. So now employee 1 is reporting to employee 2 and employee 2 is reporting to employee 3. So now this is nothing but the employee 3. Okay, so for employee 3, I will not attach any manager because he is the top level manager. So under him, I have some other person called employee 2. So now when I create employee 2, I'll attach this user called Arun97 to the employee 2. And again, if I create employee 1, I'll attach employee 2 as manager. Okay. So this is how the supervisory rules will work in terms of approvals for the requisition or the purchase order. Okay. But this is not mandatory because as an option we can go for other approval rules also. So that's the reason this is optional. Okay. So these are again related to HCM. There is payroll and the other module. Okay. So I'll just say save and close. Okay, I think the instance is slow. Okay. Yeah, so maybe I'll just talk about this approval. Okay. So now, so the next setup that we have is that approval. Okay, so there are two setups that are remaining. So one is approval and the other one is tab. Okay, so first I'll talk about approval. So there are multiple options that we have in terms of writing the approval rules. Okay, so first thing is that I can say if I'm having one level approval, so instead of giving or attaching the manager here or giving the or setting up the approval group. So what I can do is that so I can say this is the user. So directly I can select the user if it is one level approval. But that will not work out if I'm having multiple levels of approval, that is level 2 or 3 or 4, whatever the multiple layers that we have. Okay, so now this approval rule will work in a way that if I give this as if condition, so let's say I'm giving condition as if, so if this condition satisfies, then I wanted to trigger this approval process. Okay, so now in this approval process, so there could be two possibilities. So one is I wanted to get it auto approved, and other one is that I wanted to get this routed to the respective managers. Okay, so now, when will I go for auto approval and when will I go for manager's approval? Because if you see in terms of requirements, so if we get the requirements from the business users, so ideally, so what we will get from them is that, so if it is below this particular limit, so the last one that I have worked, so the limit that I had is that 5,000. So below 5,000, if this particular purchase order is created or the requisition is created, so I wanted to basically route it through auto approved route. Okay, so if anything beyond 5,000, so I wanted to route it through approval. So there are multiple DOA. Okay, DOA is nothing but delegation of authority. So that's what I'm referring to DOA. So now I will have multiple layers. Okay. So now so that will differ based on the department. So the one that I worked is basically based on the department. Okay. And also the other one that I worked is is basically based on the position that is created in the system, and the other one I have seen based on the transaction type that we are creating, and even the item classification. Okay, so when I say item classification, so it is basically the item category that I'm referring to. Okay, so these are the different requirements that we will get, and in terms of option in the system, so we have, as I said, directly you can attach the user, or if you want to have it as a serialized, so you can do that, or if you want to probably, let's say, have a parallel. So now, so there are two approvals that you can set it up in the system. So what are those is that? So here, so I'll just take the requisition approval first. Okay.
Hey, Arun, like, are we done with the agent configuration? Is that all?
Yeah,
Or
agent is done.
can you please go back to the agent configuration?
Okay. Yeah. One
Manage procurement agents.
minute.
So the one what we had created,
Yeah. Okay.
this was on. I can.
1 minute. Okay. So I'll just say
So
add.
usually organization like if you whatever whenever we are implementing, if they
Okay.
want to place for that particular employee, we will if he is placing any order to the supplier,
Okay.
the only option is that we'll create a employee and then we'll create a
Correct.
agent. And to that agent, we'll assign a user, what employee what we created, and
Yeah.
then we'll provide the agent access here.
Correct.
So, how many like typically how many agents we might create or end up in creating
Yeah,
typically in
so
a
usually if you see in a particular business unit, so we will have at least 4 to 5 buyers in a company. Okay, so now here there are two possibilities. So the last one that I worked was like a centralized one wherein requisition can be created. So that's what I was referred to the shared services. Okay, so now this requisition will be created. Okay, and this is given to the head office. So now head office will convert this requisition into purchase order. So they had almost 22 buyers, which means the 22 procurement agents. So now since this is centralized mode of procuring the items, so we have these many buyers are the procurement agents. But if you take it by unit, so probably you will not have more than 3 to 5, I can say.
okay. Okay. So, are there any other apart from these standard actions? Will there be any some custom actions also, or these standard actions only?
Customization meaning,
Like you
here
have these
we are
standard
talking.
actions below here, right? Like action, manage requisition, manage purchase order, manage purchase agreements.
No,
So,
no custom actually. These are standard ones given by Oracle. So if you
so
see,
this,
we will not be able to add also. So it's only the view
okay,
of placing.
okay. So if any access is required apart from the one what is listed, that is not possible. So whatever
Yeah,
is
not
here,
yeah, not possible. The
just
reason being, if you see, so these are basically the transactions. So apart from these items, so if I want to bring in something new, which means I'm building a process as an new process that I'm bringing into the Oracle application, which is not possible if we have the SaaS as an application mode. If I have PaaS, probably I can take this as it is and I can add my own fields there using probably Apache or some other application. I can use that and build there. But here in this screen, I'll not be able to add anything.
okay, okay. So procurement agent configuration. So whatever the configuration what we have done here, when we'll be
Yeah.
evaluating this? When we'll be validating this? Like in the upcoming sessions? Like for
I mean,
example, this
af-
agent Arun, we have given, you are giving the full access here. Maybe like some in some of the action you might have give only view permission.
yeah.
So during at what stage like you'll use this agent and perform the actions.
Yeah, so this depends whether we have these transactions required for this particular implementation or not. So
Okay.
now there will be few implementations where you will need only the requisition and the purchase orders. And
Hmm.
even the some implementation which I have seen, so that is a short-term project basically, but what I have seen is that so they primarily procured this Oracle subscription to use the financial modules effectively, but then later they decided that they will go for the procurement as well. Okay, so now for this procurement, they are handling something in the custom stream. Okay, so which they were using it, and then we suggested to go for Oracle for the procurement. So they said that we will not need the requisition because we have a team wherein they will create this purchase order directly and they will give it to the supplier. Okay, so it's only the purchase order, and then we will receive the items in the stores, and then it will go to the accounts payable module for the payment and the invoice processing. So it depends on the requirement. So now if for this particular scenario, so I will not give any of the options. So for everything, so I'll say none. So except this purchase order. So it's completely depending on the requirement that we get from the business. So if they don't want this RFQ and the other options, so I'll not give this negotiation also. Because when we talk about negotiation, it is the RFQ that we are talking about. Okay. So it depends on the business that they are going to use all these functions, or we are going to give only the specific options.
Okay. Okay. So you're saying like some of the organization may directly go ahead with the POs directly creation, not even the creations.
Correct.
So such case also
Okay.
there.
Yeah.
So whatever agent you are creating here and assigning these privileges,
Yeah.
so when will validate like that agent is able to manage or agent is able to manage the POs
Yeah, so so this will be validated when we try to create the transaction. That is either it could be the requisition or the purchase
in the
order.
upcoming
So,
sessions, is it?
yeah, correct.
Okay, okay, fine. Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah. So we'll complete the setup part first, and then
Okay,
we'll go to the transaction.
okay. So, Arun, do you have that Excel sheet like in the beginning that was having all the topics for the procurement?
Yeah, I think I have somewhere.
In the Excel sheet you had put,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So in this,
Okay.
no, not this. The what do we call like the topics for the training that you had put in Excel sheet, no?
Topics. Yeah, I have put in, but I'm not sure which one I used it.
Not this Excel, maybe some other Excel
Yeah.
you have used. You remember like
Yeah, I saved somewhere, but I'm not sure whether I saved in my local system or in Drive.
let me see. Do you want to stop sharing and then open that and again share your screen? Because it's record.
Yeah, I'll just check my this thing.
Yeah.
I think you're referring to this one, right?
Yeah, right. So here, so which one like we have discussed so far and like or we reached here? If you're talking
Okay.
about the procurement first.
Yeah. So what we have seen till now is that so this part we have completed it. So that is prerequisites until the business unit and creating the inventory arc. So inventory arc
Mhm.
again will have in this list. Okay, but then we have covered here because that is also part of the prerequisite. Okay,
Okay.
and also we covered the supplier and then we have seen this option, so that is procurement business function and this thing. Okay, and the next thing that we are talking about is this approval. So after this approval, so we will have this thing how to create the rules and how to create the conditions and how do we set our approval flow to be designed. Okay, so this we will see. Okay, so and apart from that, so we will also see something called tab. So this is the one. Okay, so we'll see what are the accounts that we will use and how do we use this accounts. Okay, so this is one thing. And then we saw this procurement catalog. So that is the category that we created, right? Uh, I think we created for this item class. So before this refresh, we created that and we attached that particular catalog to our item.
Okay. Did we do this create and manage smart forms,
No,
content
smart
domain?
forms, it is transaction part. So we'll have to create the smart forms.
Yeah, like because it is bit confusing like, because we are covering so many topics. So what all we
Okay.
have covered so far in this? Like, can we mark it as yellow or something? We want to fill it so that we can. This also is request to be covered, like procure to pay flow and application integration. What you have in the first one, right? Procure to pay flow, procurement application integration, and
I mean, I did not go in the same sequence what we are seeing here because if you
yeah, yeah,
see, so I have started with what are the prerequisites is what why
true,
I identified first, and
true,
then I have taken some set of sequence in terms of
true,
configurations,
true.
and then I plan for the individual transaction. So that is when we'll have the requisition and the purchase order and even the
Yeah,
smart forms on all those things. So
yeah.
here, if you see, so I mean, this I'll have to take point by point in that case because
I agree with your point. Like maybe we cannot go in this order because when we are going with the flow, like in the setup wise,
yeah,
we can go that way. But at least like whatever we are covering end of the day,
okay,
that if we can mark, so we'll know. Otherwise, we might miss some of the important topics. Otherwise, which might be connected to the same one which you are explaining, and maybe like later
okay,
we have to come back again. Uh, so if I understand, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 are there which needs to be covered, and one we need to talk. And
mm,
second one, set up the procurement common function, implement
okay.
common procurement tasks.
Okay, so maybe I'll use this sequence then because what I explained is different way of covering the topics, but this if you see, so this is the generic table of contents or the course content we cover, but what I have started with is not the exact sequence. So this part, so we started with the exact sequence, but this part, if you see, so we directly started with the transaction. So these are basically the theoretical part of it.
Yeah.
But I basically, if you see, so I'll cover this P2P flow. So where I'll talk about this application integration, and then I'll say that these are the components that we have. I mean, that is how I will just link the different items between this topic.
Okay.
But this way I don't have it, but because I'm not sure how to mark the completed item because the one that I covered is different, and what we are seeing is at high level. So
Okay.
if I want to mark whatever I have covered, so I'll have to again break the items, certain items here, and then I'll have to bring that. Because if you see here,
Mhm.
so we have just the common procurement task, but
Yeah.
we have seen the requisition and the other options separately,
Mhm.
which I will have to again break this up.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So in that case, maybe I'll have to take point by point. That is first point.
If
Maybe I
you are
can take.
comfortable with the flow, like whatever sequence you are explaining, I'm okay with that. But only thing is, I'm just trying to ensure that we will cover everything what is mentioned here.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe we can do one thing. So I'll just complete the flow. Okay, so that is
Yeah.
I'll complete the configurations and then I'll complete the transaction part, and then we will revisit the table of contents. And if we missed something or if we are not clear on something else, we will do it again.
Yeah. So you are right, like this prerequisites we are done. Like one, whenever you want, we can touch upon that. Second, maybe part of that, and define and manage suppliers. Uh, this like did we cover all these like topics or have it like one,
No,
two,
not all
three?
these things.
Not all.
Because if you
And
see, yeah, because even when I was explaining, so
yeah,
I said that I did not cover entirely because the
true.
supply screen that is large. So we will see
Yeah,
it later point in time. So when we create the transaction, so that's
true,
why
true.
I couldn't mark this one also because whatever is the mandatory is what we covered as a prerequisite.
Okay, okay. And then if you scroll down here, like four, we are yet to talk like on the approvals at high level now, and then fifth is there, sixth procurement catalog part of it,
Yeah. So these are
and
related to the transactions.
requisitions tab is there. So all are there. So like maybe at end of the class every day we'll once it is over we'll come back here if you want. We'll revisit and again we'll meet next class or 2 days once whatever comforts you. But
Okay.
you go ahead with your flow like whatever is comfortable. But we'll revisit to we'll come back to this Excel sheet and again we'll go back there.
Okay. So maybe what I will do is that,
Mhm.
so to start with, I'll maybe explain these 3 points first,
Okay,
and then probably I'll just go with this, and then
okay,
so after this, basically, we'll not have this part because
okay,
this is kind of an something which we are talking about. So after configuration, we'll have to do this approval matrix, and then
okay,
we'll have to check the flow of the purchase order and whether
okay,
the approval is working or not. So, this is not basically in the way that we are seeing things because this again, if you see, so this is setup. But
correct,
this what we are seeing is the transaction. So
correct.
even again here if I come to top, so this is transaction and this is setup.
Right, right. We need not
Yeah,
go in this order. Like, yeah, maybe like it is being put like that, but we need not go in this order, but
yeah,
just we need
yeah,
to
I
revisit
understood.
once like we are covering or not.
Yeah, sure. I understood. So that's what I'm saying. So probably these 3 points I'll just explain and we'll mark these three
Yeah,
today. Okay, so we'll cover these three
yeah,
and then we'll try to cover these items also. Okay, and
yeah.
from here we'll go to approval management. Okay.
Right. Because Arun, you are the expert here. You have to decide on the
Yeah.
sequence
Yeah.
also because I might tell you something which might not be, which might not make sense to you, but like you are the better person, like when to discuss which
Yeah.
topic. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, sure. Maybe I'll just start with this thing. Okay, so the first thing that we have is that the procurement architecture and the component. Okay, so
Yeah.
now when we talk about okay, maybe I'll just open one sheet. Okay,
Okay.
so here the procurement architecture will go something like this. Okay, so I have my purchase orders, Okay, so which will be created in the screen, I mean in the application. Okay, so now when we talk about this architecture for the procurement module, so this is basically integrated with multiple applications. Okay, so when we
Mhm.
say multiple applications, so what are the integrated applications are that? So firstly, this will talk with inventory. Okay, so because this is the primary module which we will talk about, because if I want to basically procure an item, so I will need this particular item to be associated with my inventory. Okay, so which means that my item will be stored in the inventory module against this particular item organization. Okay, so now first module that we'll talk about is inventory. Okay, and then I have this costing module. Okay, so costing is not directly linked with procurement module, but it is indirectly linked because this is linked directly with the inventory module. The way that it is linked is that, so now I am creating this particular purchase order. Okay, so now this
Yeah.
purchase order is created using a price, so I might attach a price to my item, but then if this item price is not the same as what vendor is giving me, because end of the day I cannot go with the master what I have it with me, so I'll have to go with the agreed price with the vendor. Okay, so which vendor is going to give to me in terms of the, either it could be the purchase order or the amended purchase order, so that vendor will be giving it to me. Okay, so that's the official document for me in terms of considering it. Okay, so now when we talk about costing, it is about the pricing and the other components that we are talking about. Okay, so which means directly this costing is not integrated with the procurement, but indirectly it is integrated because this talks with the inventory, because the flow that will go is something like this. Okay, so now I have created the item, so vendor says that I'll deliver the item on, let's say, 30th of December. So now he's delivering tomorrow. Okay, so now this item is received, so where I'll receive this item, so again this will be received in inventory. Okay, so to inventory, so I'll have direct link, and to the costing module, so I'll have indirect link. Okay, so now this item is received. So after this, what I will do is that, so basically I'll do the invoicing.
Okay.
Okay,
So inventory is nothing but a group of items, right? Like, I mean, inventory will contain the item
correct, items.
passed through. Yeah. So you are saying that typically organizations they use the inventory module to store all the items related information.
Correct.
And costing they will use to store the item price, is it?
Yeah, price, basically the costing. So how much it is being incurred. So let's say I purchase this particular item. So costing is basically consolidation of my supply chain modules. Meaning I have purchased this raw material. Okay.
Mhm.
So now this particular raw material cost is let's say 10 rupees. So now I'm adding another raw material for 50 rupees. So now this
Okay.
cost is 60 rupees, which is my raw material cost. Okay, and then
Mhm.
I will have my production, so wherein I'll have my labor cost, and then I'll have my machineries and the other overheads
Mhm.
added to this particular processing, or in the
Okay.
process of manufacturing. Okay, so now this will get adds to, let's say, 20 rupees for an item.
Mhm.
Okay, and now total, if we total this, so cost of this production is 80 rupees. Okay,
Mhm.
but the cost of sales, that is, so we call it as COGS. COGS is nothing but cost of goods sold. Okay, so
Oh, okay.
that's the one that we are referring to here. Okay, so now if I want to understand this particular item called COGS, or the basic costing for this item, so I will have to look at the entire picture. So that is starting from procurement till
Mhm.
the order management or the sales order that I have performed in the system. So all
Okay.
this information should be interfaced to this module called costing. Okay, so this is how basically we are saying this is the actual cost incurred by us, and this is the cost that we have used to sell this particular item, and this
Okay.
is our profit margin, and so that's all about our costing basically.
Okay. And costing will come under which pillar of the, it's again in a SCM only or finance side?
Yeah, SCM.
SCM, okay. Okay. And you are saying like once the PO is received or so, it will be updated in the inventory module on the on-hand quantity and
Correct.
total quantity. That
Correct.
all will be gets updated in the inventory module only.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay, so that will be updated. So when I receive the item.
Hmm. Okay.
So after I receive the item, so I'll have to do the invoicing. Okay. If I want to do the invoicing, so then I will have to link with my payables module because this option I have it only in the payables modules. Okay. So now this is for the material purchase that we are talking about. Okay.
Okay.
So now let's say that I have asset purchase.
Hmm.
Now, after this invoicing, okay, so this particular item will be interfaced to the asset module or the fixed asset module. So again, this is not directly linked with purchase order, but it is indirectly linked because the item that we have procured is
Hmm.
being invoiced, and this is directly linked with payable module, but it is indirectly linked with purchase order module or the procurement module. So what will directly talk to procurement module is that the inventory, okay, and the payable module. So these are the primary modules that will talk with the procurement module.
Okay.
Okay. But when we talk about the procurement or the purchase order, so we'll talk about basically first thing is that our way of doing the transaction. So when we say way of transaction, so we are trying to understand here the type of transaction that we are doing. So it could be the inventory purchase that I might be making, or this could be expense, okay, or this could be asset purchase. So now, how do
Okay.
we understand is that? So basically, based on the options that we have selected in the inventory or the item creation screen.
Hmm.
So yeah. So now here if you see, so there I have a parameter called enable for inventory. So if I say I can store this particular item in my inventory, which
Hmm.
means that this particular purchase order which I'm going to make is as an inventory purchase. So this could
Okay.
be my raw material purchase or this could be my finished good purchase. So when I go for finished good purchase is that, so if I have probably, let's say I wanted to purchase, let's say, or let's take a separate business scenario. So, wherein I'm not doing this manufacturing process, wherein I buy this item and I sell it to some third party. Okay. So, in this case, what I will do is that, so I'll purchase as a finished good. Okay. So, I'll mark this particular inventory item as finished good. Okay. And I'll do the purchase. Okay. So, this we call it as inventory procurement. So where I'll have this as a material. Okay. Now the second thing that what we are talking about is expense. So expense it could be different ways. So one such expense that I can say is that, so I have my utility bills. Okay. So utility bills, let's say the electricity charge. So I will know if I know, let's say the let me take the internet bill. Okay, so this internet bill is part of this utility charges. Okay, so now I know this is on month I'm paying, let's say 1,800. Okay, so this is the charge I'm making. So what I will do is that I'll create one purchase order for probably 1,800 into 12. So which means for 21,600 I'll make one purchase order. Okay. So here I might use this particular purchase order every month. Okay. So for this month I'll say this is 1,800. So when we say using the purchase order, so we are referring to the invoicing part. Okay, so
Okay.
in this case, we will not receive the item because for expense, we will
Hmm.
not have the physical material with us, so we will not be able to receive the item. So when we cannot receive the item, so the way that we'll do the matching is that we'll do three-way matching, sorry, two-way matching. So if it is two-way matching, then it is matched with the purchase order. So I will not have my receipt or the delivery part here. So directly I'm creating the purchase order and then I'm creating the invoice. Okay. So it is against this particular consolidated amount that will be matching with the invoice. Okay. So this is one option. And the third one that we have is that asset purchase. So probably I'm purchasing the machinery. Okay. So if I'm purchasing the machinery, then what will happen is that, so I'll say this is my asset purchase. So again, how I will identify that this is my asset purchase is that, so again, when I define the item, so here if you see, so we do not have item. So I'll just say this is my
Yeah.
utility bill, that is internet, and I'll close it. But for this material and machinery, so I'll have separate segregation. So here I'll not enable this as an asset. Okay. So here I will have to enable this as an asset. Okay. And also I will have my asset category. So asset category
Okay.
is nothing but this table. So they will have something. So this is kind of a finance thing, but we'll have to understand it. Okay. So now we will have something called major and minor. So let's say I'm purchasing this machinery. Okay. So I will have heavy equipment. Okay. So this would be my major category. And under this, I will have probably the spinning machine. Okay, so this would be my minor category. So this I will attach it with my item. Okay, so based on this, we are identifying this is my asset item and this is my inventory item or the material purchase that I'm trying to make. But this, of course, we'll know. Okay, so now here again I will create the receipt. Okay, so here and here I will create the receipt. Okay. So now here in the entire process, if you see, so we are integrating with uh, the inventory module because we are creating the receipt. Okay.
Yeah.
So when we create the receipt, so that is when we are getting the item inside our inventory. Okay. So this
Yeah.
is our inward transaction. Okay. So this again I can do either through purchase order or I can do a miscellaneous receipt and get the items inside it. But the miscellaneous receipt it is not encouraged because that will lead to the reconciliation issues because I'll not know for what reason I entered this miscellaneous transaction because that is again kind of a suspense transaction that I'm booking in the system. Okay. So whatever the item that we are getting into the inventory, so always it should be using the purchase order. Okay.
Okay.
So this inventory is directly linked and this payable module is directly linked. Okay. So this is how it will flow through. So now in terms of the cycle, so it will start something like this. So I will have my requisition. Okay. So let's talk about first the three-way matching. Okay. So here I'll start with the requisition and then I'll create the negotiation. Okay. And then I'll have the quotation from the suppliers. So based on this, I will compare between the suppliers and I'll do one award. So award is nothing but I'm giving this particular deal to a particular supplier. For one supplier, I'm just giving this deal. Okay. So now this process is called RFQ, that is negotiation and award. Okay, request for
Okay.
quotation. So now once this is done, so I will have to create the purchase order. So now if I complete this process, that is RFQ, automatically purchase order will be created because here in this process, since I'm awarding this requisition or this particular negotiation to a supplier, so system automatically creates the purchase order. Okay, so now so here we might have a specific date wherein we have committed to deliver. I mean, the vendor has committed to deliver. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there are two dates that we'll talk about. So one is the request date and the promise date. So the request
Okay.
date is the date that we have requested, okay, and promised date is basically the what is the date that vendor has promised. Okay, so based on this, so I'll get the item on a specific date. So let's say the requested date is different and the promised date is different. So in this case, it's the promised date that will be taken into consideration. Okay. So now on this promised date, so we have received the item. Okay. So we will create the receipt in the system. So now when we talk about three-way matching, so we'll talk about the receipt. Okay, so now this receipt will be created in multiple ways. So I can just say this is direct, okay, or I can say this is standard, or I can say this is inspection. So now, what are the difference, or how do I choose which one I should opt for if this is the requirement? So what is the option that I should look for? So now, direct is something that I'll create only receipt. I will not deliver the item. Okay, because if you take this scenario, that is the asset purchase, so, this is example of machinery. Okay, so let's not take the machinery. So let's take the asset purchase. Okay, so now I'm purchasing the laptop. So if I'm purchasing laptop, so what I will do is that so I will basically get the item and create the receipt in the system saying that I have received the item. Okay, so now for the laptop, I don't have any specific place to store this laptop because I'm just going to get the item and give it to someone, whoever has raised this particular request. Okay. So this
Mm,
second part is what we are talking about the delivery. Okay. So when
mm,
I will have delivery is that, so when I have item with me, so here if you see, I have this inventory material with me. Okay. So this item will be delivered, but this laptop will not be delivered. So if I talk about the laptop, so I'll just say this is direct. So in this case, I will not need the delivery. So I'll create the receipt and I'll create the invoice. Okay. So I'm
mm.
talking about this invoicing. Okay.
Yeah.
So now this we understood. So that is this option. If I go to purchase the material, that is raw material, so I'll have to do a delivery process as well. Okay. So now again I'll take the raw material. Okay. So now there will be a process wherein this raw material will be checked by the concerned department. So usually it will be the quality check department. So we will check and give the report. Okay. So I will create the receipt, I'll create the delivery, and I'll create the inspection report. Okay. So once this is done, so this is when I will basically create the invoice. So if I'm talking about this, so it's the point of delivery, and if I'm talking about inspection, it's the inspection report. After which I will have this invoicing delivered. Okay. So these are the different ways that we can handle this particular transaction called receipt. Okay. And then probably as a standard one, so what we will have is that, so we'll have these two options. So there are certain inventory which they will ask for the direct delivery. So as I said, so that particular inventory will be created as the asset items. Okay, so there I will have only the direct, but whereas the this particular inventory I'll create it as a standard. But inspection is less likely used because if you see, so this is very rarely used because the items are delivered, so we will have to just accept and sign and give it back to the vendor or the freight carrier provider, so whoever is delivering us the goods. Okay, so now in this process, we'll not be able to do this completely because if I want to do it, so probably after doing the delivery and I'll sign the copies and then I'll have to send it to the QA team and then they will have to give me the report. So after which I will mark this as received, okay, and then I will create the invoice in accounts payable module. Okay, so
Mhm.
more uh, business scenarios that we will see is these two options. So majorly it's this option. with delivery. So there are certain options that will have only the receipts also. Okay. So I have taken widely used scenario. Okay. So that's the reason I have marked the delivery also. Okay.
Okay.
So now I have delivered the item. So the moment I delivered this item, so accrual will be started. So accrual is kind of a finance term, but what exactly is accrual? So accrual meaning I have received the item, okay, but not invoiced.
Okay.
So this is what we are referring to the accrual. Okay. So now this accrual will be created here, the receipt part. So once I invoice this particular transaction, so this accrual will be closed and liability will be opened. So these items are basically the finance terms, but for us, in order to understand the P2P cycle, so we need to know what are these finance terms. Okay. So now this liability is something that I have created the invoice, but I have not paid it. Okay. So invoice is created, but not paid. Or I should go to someone. Okay. So that's the exact meaning of
Mm-hmm.
liability.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now this liability is created. So now I will have to make the payment. So here again, I'll have the cash clearing. So now what exactly is cash clearing? So I have paid this particular invoice, but not acknowledged by bank, which means I did not get the statement from bank. So I don't know whether this amount is paid to the vendor or not. Probably I'm just trying to make NEFT transaction. There might be a network issue. So this payment
Mm-hmm.
has failed. So I'm not sure whether this is really went to this vendor. Okay. So for the purpose, we have something called cash clearing. Okay. So finally, we have something called cash. So cash is something that vendor has received the amount. Okay, so these are finance components, but you'll have to understand these basic things. Okay, so that's the reason I'm just putting here. Okay, so now here I will have the recon with CMS module. Okay, so this is the flow for us in terms of understanding the P2P cycle. Okay, so this we are talking about the three-way matching. Okay, so then we have something called two-way matching. So in case of two-way matching, so probably I will not have these spots, but what I will have is that, so I will create the purchase order directly. Okay, and from here I'll make the invoice and the payments directly. So this is what we are referring to the two-way matching. Okay, so in this
Okay.
case, yeah.
Here you have like this requisition, negotiation, quotation, and all. Is it not part of the CPQ or
No,
uh,
this will not be usually the part of this, because if you want to create this, so you will have the request for the item screen, and then you'll have to get the quotation, and then you will have the PO that is created. So usually this is the flow that you will see. Okay, because most likely you will have three-way matching. So when you will have two-way matching, so it is when you create the expense. So for internet
Mhm.
charges and these things, so usually you will not request for the item and then compare the price and then
Yeah,
go for the purchase order. So that will not be the actual scenario in terms of
right.
business. Okay, so that's the reason mostly if it is two-way matching, so you'll have a purchase order, then directly invoice and then payment and then return. Okay. So now, when we talk about the four-way matching, so we'll have additional one thing that will be added here. Okay, so here I will have the inspection also added. So this is the only thing that will get added. Okay, so after inspection, so I will have the invoice that is matched with inspection report. Okay, so once this is done, so that is when I'm going to complete my invoicing part. Okay, so the rest are same. So whatever we are saying, so rest are same process. So here we will not see any changes. Okay, so so this is the flow. Okay, so now talking about the architecture. Okay, before that, integration between the application. So if you see this flow, so it is majorly the procurement model that we are talking about. And here if you see, so this is in the inventory module and this is in the payment module. Okay, so as a flow, we will see these transactions, but what will directly communicate with the procurement module? It is your payable module and the inventory module that will talk with the purchase order. Okay. Okay. So now talking about
Yeah.
the yeah. So now talking about the architecture. Basically, so this is built in a way that we will have capability to integrate. Okay. So before that, so what are the components that we have inside this particular application is that so this component basically builds the architecture. Okay. So now when we talk about this components, so the first thing that we'll talk about is this thing, what do you call the tab. So tab is nothing but, so tab will look something to something similar to the finance configuration, but not exactly, because the tab configurations will be done by us, the procurement consultants will do this particular option. Okay, because finance they will do the SLA configuration, but not this particular setup, that is tab. Okay, so I'll just write here transaction account builder. Okay, so that is the reason to understand. So I just gave this accrual account and these things definitions.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So now here, if you see, so the reason why we are building this tab is that so now if I want to basically bring in the rules to be generated automatically, because in the earlier version, that is EBS application, if you see, so we have this account builder. Okay, so using that basically we'll build the accounts, but then here if you see, so it's not the account builder that will use, and also this is flexible more than the account builder. Okay, because here if you see, so we will have more flexibility in terms of giving the condition and deriving the accounts. So what are the options that we will have? So if I want to derive the accounts from the source application, I can do. So this we will see in detail, but to give the idea of this architecture, I'm just explaining this. Okay. So now we have source, and then we have mapping set, and then we have um, what you call the account code combination. Okay, so I can just give the constant, or I'll just write it as constant. Okay, so this I can build it. So now this is used only for the purpose of getting the accounts. So now when we talk about accounts, so what is that primarily we'll talk about is that first thing is our accrual. So accrual account, as I said, so this is item received but not invoiced. Okay. So then the second one that we'll talk about is variance. Variance is something that let's say I have given PO price as let's say 100 rupees. Okay. But then for the item in the master I have given as 80 rupees. So now the variance is this 20 rupees. Okay. So where this particular balance will sit in terms of accounting, it is this account, that is variance account, will be used if I want to basically deal with this. Okay.
Okay.
So this is the use of basically having this component called transaction account builder. So this will basically derive the account code combination in the system because yeah. So one thing is that so here for the purchase order or the requisition. So which means that from here to here, so we will not have any accounts or the accounting entry that is generated by the system. So the accounting flow starts from here, that is from the receipt entry. So the flow will start. Okay. So now this flow or this particular setup that we are doing, so this is for only these two items that we are doing. Okay, so that is our receipt and the delivery part. So for invoice, again from the finance configuration that they have done, so they this particular accounts will be derived. But this configuration talks about only the procurement related accounts. Okay, so this is first component that we will have. Okay, and then the second thing that what we will have is that something called the BPM are the approvals. Okay, so when we talk about approvals, it is for two transactions. So it is for the requisition and the purchase orders. Okay, so I'll give it for requisition and also I'll give it for the purchase orders.
Okay.
Okay, so these are the two things that I'll give. Okay, so this is one thing. And then in terms of architecture, so I have basically the security control. So when we say security control, it is the access, that is role-based access that we are talking about. That is, if you remember, so we created user and then we applied this, okay, and then we will have to create the buyer. Okay, and also we'll have to create this particular person as employee and then the procurement agent, all those things. Okay, so now these are the options that I will have to give to this particular person if at all he or she wants to use this purchase order screen. Okay, so now we have different layers in terms of controlling or managing our security layer. Okay, so this is one thing. And then if I want to talk about the integration, yeah, I think integration we have talked about. So that is about the different modules that it is being interacted with the procurement. Okay, so but in terms of architecture that is linked with different modules is this. Okay, but then inside this I also have the supplier management. Okay, so supplier management is inside this. So usually the supplier screen will be created under the accounts payable. So it was part of finance, but then in the latest release and these things, the cloud application. So we have this as part of the procurement offering. Okay. So the reason being, so if I want to basically create the supplier, so what would be my source transaction? So it is always the requisition or the purchase order, which will be my source transaction. Okay. So now either it could be the requisition or the purchase order. So who will create? It will be created by the procurement executive or the buyer or the basically the procurement agent who will create it.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that is the reason this has bought under this particular module or the offering called procurement. Okay. So this builds our procurement module as a whole. So in terms of achieving the business requirements, whatever we are having it. Okay. So now here again, if I want to have the supplier portal, which means that if I want to create new supplier, so I wanted to get it approved. So then I so then I can create this approval hierarchy there. Okay, so which so this is similar to the item approval which we saw. Okay, so it's similar to that, but in the different screen. So I set the approval. Okay, so basis on that, So it is going to get it approved. So unless this vendor is approved, so I'll not be able to use it in the transaction script. Okay.
Okay.
So this builds our procurement module basically.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's about it. Yeah, I think.
Automotive. So I was thinking like around costing, usually customers will not go, they'll maintain the cost also in the inventory module itself. That's not the case, is it?
Not exactly because costing is separate module.
Yeah, module is there, but for the inventory, if they wanted to maintain cost, it will not be done in the inventory module, is it?
No, not in the inventory module. So inventory module, we will only talk about the item management, but costing
Oh,
part, so we'll have it as a separate this one.
okay.
Okay. Okay, any other question?
No. So,
Okay.
any updates?
Okay, so let me just mark this and the procure to pay flow. Okay, and then the integration part.
And where
Okay.
is this sourcing coming here in the as part of the procurement? Sourcing or contracts?
So sourcing
Uh,
is basically through what source I'm just getting this particular purchase order. Okay, so there could be different sources that I might have created. Okay, so that's the
okay.
sourcing module. So that we'll talk about. Okay, so from
Okay.
there we will basically identify. So what are the sourcing components that needs to be built in. So those are part of that module. So we'll see that.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so the maybe today it's 10:30, so we'll stop here and we'll start tomorrow.
Time really flying very fast.